Hey everyone! In today's video, I'm excited to take you behind the scenes of how I created a detailed map of Empire, which is the fictional world that the UK's biggest live-action role-playing festival takes place in. The purpose of this video is to show the process of how I make these maps, combining AI image generation with 3D modeling and digital painting. I do this both because I think many might find the process interesting or inspiring, but also because I have recently found out that AI-generated content is prohibited at the festival, so I wanted to give complete transparency to how my images are made and to hear what the community thinks about it. For as you shall see, it's quite a bit more complicated than simply writing a prompt and waiting for the result. The first step in creating this map was to start with the base image that had been drawn by a community member which I found on the Empire wiki and converted it into a line drawing. This allowed me to clearly define the regions, which I later used to mask out the different areas. Next, I began placing 3D objects on the map. Some of these I created myself and some I found on sites like Sketchfab. I positioned the buildings and rotated them to align them with the edges of the map's territories. I wanted the motifs themselves to draw the boundaries of the regions. After rendering the 3D assets, I placed them on top of the map in Photoshop. I then painted in the ocean and rivers to ensure that the coast will be continuous and accurate across all the territories. I then copied in a more detailed map of the Empire, again from the wiki, that helps give a bit more texture and helps me see where there are mountains and where there are forests. This texture will also be beneficial for the AI to give it more noise to work with. I also added text, which I turned white and added a glow around them, which will make sure that the text that I add later will be legible. An AI can only generate images that are about 1000 pixels on each side. My map will be much bigger than that, more than 10 times, so I need a way to generate the images in pieces. That is where the boundaries of the territories are handy. I use the masks that I had originally made and make new image files for each one. I then did a quick sketch over each of the images, altering their compositions and adding smaller details such as shrubbery, flags, or waves in the water. Now they are all ready to be used as inputs to the AI software called Stable Diffusion. For each of the regions, I read through the wiki article looking for key pieces of architecture and information on what they might look like. I also used the ideas that I had from the survey that I had done at the previous festival, where I asked the players what they think the different nations would build. Using this, I wrote text prompts that fit each of the regions. Combining the image inputs and text prompts, I can vary which to emphasize by changing the denoising value, and I generally test out some different numbers, around 0.5, which essentially uses half and half. I generate about 10 options for each region, and I pick my favorite. Very little is known about the regions at the four corners of the map, so I therefore decided to add a circular frame around the map. So for each corner, I created a circular frame that I wanted to fill with a view of a distant land. I imagined the inhabitants of Empire not having as clear ideas of what they looked like, and so I decided to use a different method, and so I went to the park to do a sketch of each one. The different texture of my strokes here will create for quite different outputs when I use them as inputs for Stable Diffusion. To complete the frame, I added some ornaments inspired by 8 of the constellations of the fantasy world. Again, I sketched them out in Photoshop before using Stable Diffusion to finish them off. So now the map is almost done, but the different pieces doesn't quite fit together. And so I merged them all into a single giant image file. And then in Photoshop, I went over all the edges with a brush to tidy up to make sure each region flows into the next. I then ran the whole thing through Stable Diffusion a final time using a function called SD Upscale. So there you have it, the image is finally done after about 4 days work. And I hope you found it interesting. I'm now going to pan around the map to show you all the details. And as I do so, I wanted to open up a conversation about the topic of AI and authorship, because I've been asked by Profound Decisions, the organizers of the event, to help them draw a proposal for how we might imagine building permanent architecture for a site that they're hoping to buy. I wanted to use this workflow that I've shown here, but now that I see that AI content is prohibited, I wish to ask the community what they think. And I'll start the conversation by saying how I feel about it all. So for me as an architect, I don't really see the drawing as an end in itself. I do love a good drawing, but I also think they're mainly a vehicle for a conversation about what kinds of architecture the community will want. And AI as a tool lends itself here, as it is fast and able to convey several things such as textures, ornaments, colors, etc., but also has a certain level of spontaneousness that generates details that we might not have thought of otherwise. Also, the digital workflow allows me to go back and forth to make changes based on feedback from the community. Eventually, all the designs have to be carefully drawn as we start honing in on specific designs. But for now, this allows me to cover a lot of ground and visualize both for myself and for others what the world might look like. That being said, I must say it felt quite strange to bring the previous map to Empire, as it wasn't obvious to everybody that it was made with AI. I tried explaining it to them in in-character terms, but obviously that is quite unclear. As demonstrated in the video, I have a great deal of control over the outputs that the AI does, and therefore I do feel authorship over the piece. However, it remains the case that the AI is deceiving in that it portrays itself to be hand-drawn, and therefore it starts to be compared to other people's hand drawings, which is quite unfair. But now, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts, and I expect there will be some differing opinions, and maybe some quite heated ones, and I'd love to hear all of it. So what do you think about this process? To what degree do I have authorship of the piece? And especially if you're part of the Empire community, do you think I should keep working this way, or does it break with the ideas of Empire? Also, I would greatly appreciate feedback on the architecture on display in the map, as I will be now moving on to the next piece, where I will be imagining what we might be building. Are there any changes you would like to see before I start working on the proposal for Profound Decisions? Thanks guys, and as always, please like and subscribe to help the channel out, and take care.